Hello. Hey, Daniel. I can't hear you. Oh, it says you're connecting audio. I'm sorry.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey.
Hi, can you see me? I don't think so. Hold on.
No, wait, this is Haley. Doesn't
I am.
even, yeah, it doesn't even show you as a participant. Oh, you're here as Karen. Yeah, you want to rename yourself.
How did I become you?
I don't know, but I made you host. Can you make me host?
Let's see.
You got to click on participants, and then when that comes up, you kind of put your mouse over like the name, like your name, and then you can change it. There's like an option to rename, and then there's also an option to make me host.
I don't have an option to make you host. I have mute or more, and when I click on more, I have rename. Let's see. What if I leave? If I leave, will you become the host?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna try that.
Hey, Gomer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah?
Yeah, cool. Are you guys nervous?
No.
Cool.
This will be fun.
I think so.
How are you doing?
Good, good. It's nice weather outside. It's all cloudy, and so I'm just looking out my window.
The clouds just passed where I was, so maybe they went down towards you. Where are you located?
Lake Worth, Palm Beach County.
Oh yeah, we definitely have a different system up here. But cool.
Yeah. Haley, where are you from?
I live in DeLand,
The land. Cool.
Volusia County.
Very cool, very cool.
Hey, sorry everyone. Okay, so I think this is hilarious. I think I sent out the link that was on my personal Facebook invite. So everyone logged in as Karen, which I think is hilarious.
Am I Karen?
Yeah, because I sent you my link.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, 1 second. I'll change the hair.
You're totally fine. I wonder if that's a link I sent out to like the people who confirmed. Well, they also received a confirmation when they signed up. So it just depends which link they choose to join. Alrighty, Dan, I'm looking at the presentation right now and I'm gonna add in those pictures for you. I think you're muted.
Did you get my my slides? Are they on that one?
Yeah, your pictures aren't though, so I was just gonna add, like
No.
put them in.
That's fine. Forgive me. The share document is a little advanced for me. I know it's probably not that difficult because I must have clicked the right button, but I still haven't got the use of that yet. So I just wanted to make certain. I'm looking on my sheet right now.
No worries at all. Gomer, I did receive a message from someone in one of the Facebook groups. I think it was Central Florida Progressives, that I guess the group isn't really great at monitoring. And there are a couple like kind of like right-wing people. And so they were just like, hey, be careful. I don't want, just to make sure like no one is like Zoom, whatever, joining or whatever, just keep an eye. So if anyone does like join the call that you notice is like just sharing weird video or trying to like, unmute themselves, you're more than welcome to just kick them off. Cool. Yeah, and if anyone is speaking and that happens, just make sure to be like, oh, I'm sorry about that. We'll keep going.
Gotcha. I didn't realize that I was muted, but will do. Thanks for the heads up.
You're welcome. Cool. We have about like 35 people signed up. As we know, because of COVID, flake rate is kind of like flexible. But Daniel is going to be helping us live stream it on Facebook. Hopefully everything runs smoothly, and if so, y'all can also share it later on onto your own pages or onto your organization's page. I think that's all. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay, we have a Karen here. Is that Mark or Paola? Okay, Mark, hey, can you just rename yourself? I sent everybody the link with like my personal link. Cool, we're just missing Paola and I'll send her a text. Haley, I sent you the agenda. Do you have any questions about it?
I don't think so. No, I have it up here. I'm taking a peek at it.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The only parts that aren't added to the agenda that I'm just gonna quickly just like add the bullet point is like the Zoom overview and the community guidelines. Cool. And I can cover those fairly quickly. So did you want to talk about Organized Florida just for a second. It doesn't have to be extensive.
I could, or if Rhonda is interested in talking about Organized Florida, that would be good as well, because I don't technically work for the organization, so she might represent it a little bit better than I do.
Very valid. Here, she's logging on right now,
Mhm.
and I can make sure. Daniel, I'm making you host right now. If you could make me co-host, that would be great. Daniel's going to be live streaming this. I'm going to be sharing it on different groups and pages. If you have any, I mean, which I feel like I'm going to cover pretty much all of Seminole County. But Mark, I believe I am in your Native Plant Society like group, Facebook group. I think you have one particularly for your chapter, correct? Okay, let me take a note and I can make sure to share it there as well. Yeah, so I was gonna be leading the presentation, but Gomer is gonna be clicking for the slides, right? So while I am sharing them, like on the Facebook pages, if for some reason, you know, you need to go to the next slide, you can be like, okay, you know, we're gonna go on to the next slide, just so that, you know, we can get through your slides. And yeah, just definitely make sure to try to stay in within the 10 minutes, right? Because we really do want to get through some of the like the Q&A for both the stock questions and the what do you call it? The guest questions, right? Like the audience questions, which sounds great. Hey, Rhonda.
Hey, guys.
Hey. So we were just talking about like, because we're just gonna briefly mention Flick Votes and Organized Florida. Is it okay? Like, we're just gonna leave. We didn't create a special slide for Flick Votes or Organized Florida. We're just gonna, when we have the intro slide up and we're starting, I'm gonna just welcome everybody to the presentation, right? And then would you mind, I'm going to pass it to you before I go into the Zoom overview. And would you mind just talking like for a minute about Organized Florida?
Sure, that'd be perfect. No problem.
Okay,
I'll just use
great.
their bio from their website. Like I said, the basically talks about them being a member-based organization, and that, you know, that in their guidelines, their bio talks about what they endow.
Okay, great. If anyone needs any clarification for where we are at the moment, I'm gonna drop the agenda in the chat, and that's open to everybody, I believe. Let me just make sure. Yeah, anybody can jump on that and just look at it. Okay.
And how are we doing introductions? Are they being done in the chat?
Yeah, they're all being done in the chat, and Rhonda is gonna actually read some of the highlights. Cool. Alrighty, I think we have everybody here that is like on like the presenting side. There's another Karen in the waiting room.
No.
It's not, I don't think it's anybody who is like a part of the presentation, right? Because I think everybody, yeah, everybody who's everybody for the presentation is here. Cool. So I'm just going to send them a message and be like, hey, we'll get started at 6.
Perfect.
Karen, can you make me co-host, please?
Correct. Yes, I'm going to do that. Hey, Daniel, I think no, I am co-host. Daniel, can you make Gomer, Rhonda, and Haley co-host?
Got it.
Thank you. Alrighty, so I'm going to be adding people in as we go, but if for some reason, let's say I'm sharing on Facebook and there's someone there that's waiting, Haley, Gomer, or Rhonda, y'all can just put admit and they will be added. I will say though, once we start, if you're not speaking, make sure to mute yourselves, right? Like there are folks who are hard hearing, and so we just want to make sure that they can hear well. So if you want to share your screen, Gomer, Daniel is going to start going Facebook Live here in a minute. And so just make sure we wait till we have the presentation up.
I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of Karens on this chat.
Yeah, so the good thing is that part of the presentation, we actually go over how people can change their name. So that's the good thing. Alrighty, we are about to go Facebook Live, so just stay put. We will start at 6:02, 6:03, just to give people time, but just sit put as we start. And just a reminder of the first couple slides, I'm going to do the introduction. It's very brief. Then I'm just going to say something about Flake votes. And then Rhonda's going to talk very briefly about Organized Florida. Then I'm going to cover the agenda, all of the Zoom. Then I'm gonna pass it over to Rhonda, who's going to lead the icebreaker, right? And from there, she's gonna pass it back to me to go over the community guidelines. Actually, wait, Haley, can you do the community guidelines? That way we have a better flow from the community guidelines to Paola.
Where are the community guidelines in here? Okay, yeah, I see them in here.
Yeah, there's slide 8. And then pretty much you're going to be transitioning per person, right? And so whenever Paola, Mark, or Dan are finishing up, they're going to cue you and say, thank you, for listening, or, we're going to pass it back to Haley. And then if it's okay, you're going to be leading the Q&A.
Perfect.
And that's when I'm going to be sharing on Facebook.
Okay. And Paola, how do you say your last name?
Amezquita.
Amezquita.
That's good.
And then for leading the Q&A, am I using the questions that we came up with, or am I taking questions from people who are participating?
Yeah, so the questions that we came up with can be used to start the conversation. I will say, since a lot of folks, and we just went live, keep that in mind, just really quickly, just prioritize the questions from the audience once they start coming in.
Perfect.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our event tonight. My name is Karen. I am an organizer with Flick Votes. Flick Votes essentially is leading the way here in the state of Florida to make sure that our communities are represented in the state of Florida. when it comes to elections, when it comes to community power. And so we are really excited to team up with Organize Florida today to host the Seminole Connections Panel. This is an interdisciplinary panel with three very important folks in Seminole County who have really been doing a lot of work in the community. And so we wanted to not only make sure that they could share what they are working on currently, but also that the community can ask questions. So if you have a question, please feel free to add it in the Facebook Live comment section or to add it in the Zoom chat section. And we have two folks who will make sure to ask your questions when it gets time to a Q&A. Rhonda is going to really quickly share for a minute about Organize Florida.
Hey guys, I'm Rhonda, and I'm the organizer, Organize Florida. And we embody Organize Florida is a community-based nonprofit member organization for low and moderate income families. They're dedicated to practices of social, racial, and economic justice and the promotion of equal and fair Florida for all. Our dedication to our organizing members bring communities together, one door at a time, to join in the fight for safe neighborhoods, healthy families, equality, education, good jobs, justice, and more representatives.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. And now we're going to go over a quick overview of the agenda today and what we're going to be covering. So really quickly, we're going to go over some Zoom basics for those who have joined us on Zoom. We're going to have a quick introduction session where people can actually share in the chat, and Rhonda's actually going to moderate and read some of the responses that we'll be getting. We'll go over some quick community guidelines. And from there, we'll have our panelists share for about 7 to 10 minutes on what they are working on and what are some things that if y'all want to get involved or learn more about, y'all can look into. And so our panelists include Pao. She is from the Farm Worker Association of Florida, and she's the Agroecology Program Co-Coordinator. After that, we'll be hearing from Dan Smith. He is the president of Seminole Education Association. And then finally, at the end, we'll listen to Mark Kateli, who is the president of the Cuplet Fern Native Plant Society. After that, we'll be following a Q&A. You won't want to miss it. Like I said, make sure to add your questions in the comments, and we'll be able to ask folks. And lastly, at the end, we'll cover how to get more involved and what future events are coming up, along with any announcements that people may have. We can jump to the next slide. Alrighty, so just some housekeeping. So if you are on the Zoom call, just know that you can mute and unmute yourself by clicking on the mute button at the bottom left corner of your screen. If you are going to use chat, which we highly recommend using chat, you can click down on the chat button in the center lower bottom of your screen. And here are other different like things that you can use, but the only ones that you really need to worry about are the chat and the mute button. Thank you. Next slide. Alrighty, and so again, just to reiterate, if you do not want your camera on, you can turn it off. You make sure if you're not speaking to turn your mute off. And also if you would rather speak out and ask your question or your question out loud, you can actually click on participant and raise your hand. And so you can also do that when we get to the Q&A. And you can also, again, if you want to ask a question, join the chat. And if for any reason you do need to leave the meeting, you can also exit the meeting as well. Next slide. Great. And so, like I mentioned before, you can use the hand raise feature. And so if you click on, if you first click on the chat, then you click on raise your hand, and from there you can go into the chat and essentially comment whatever you'd like. Next slide. Alrighty, and if you logged in and if you are not under the name that you like to go by, or if you'd like to update your pronouns, please feel free to click on participants and then click over your name and then click on more, and you will find how to rename yourself. And we highly recommend it. We want to make sure we know who you are. Next slide. Great. So from here, Rhonda is actually going to lead the icebreaker. Really quickly, my name's Karen. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And my favorite self-care tool is actually yoga. And so I'm going to pass it over to Rhonda to lead our icebreaker.
Hey guys, introductions and icebreakers. So if you would like to use the chat box, now's your time to, or rename yourself. So give them your name, your pronouns, and the question is, what has been your best self-help care tool to de-stress from everything that's going on, right? And anyone can share this by putting it in the chat box and letting us know exactly how you use these tools to de-stress. So, of course, my name's Rhonda, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, unicorn. And my biggest de-stress has been yoga. So chair yoga, YouTube yoga, and also talking to my sisters on the phone. So, chat box. Okay, so Haley shares her pronouns, she, hers, and she says rollerblading has been her savior. That's awesome, Haley. Very bold. Karen, she, Ella, yoga has been helping. Cool. And Mark also is he, el, and his upbeat music is great to de-stress. Awesome. Dan is he, him, and 10 minutes alone with my thoughts, and I'm better. I like that. I like that. I like that. Sometimes you have to be one with yourself. I totally agree. Does anybody else want to introduce themselves and give their pronouns and their de-stress tools? All right, well, thank you guys. And it's never too late to add your comments to the chat. Thank you.
Awesome. So now I'm going to go over the community guidelines, and I haven't introduced myself. I'm Haley. I'm working with the Disaster Resilience Initiative under Organized Florida. My pronouns are she, hers, and yeah, I'm going to go over these community guidelines. The first is to create a culture where people feel supported and included. The second is to allow us a space that allow us to create a space that doesn't further threaten or marginalize or harm any of us. The next community guideline is that this should be replicated. It's a good tool for any times that you're meeting with groups of people. So take what you're learning here and bring these to your other meetings that you're participating in or hosting. And try on. I'm not too familiar with what try on means, so maybe Karen, you can chime in and fill in on that one.
Yeah, it kind of just means like be open-minded to it. If, for example, you're just not familiar with some of the concepts here, you know, don't kind of like, you know, be like, oh, that's something that, you know, just like it doesn't matter, whatever. Just kind of be open-minded to thinking about it more. You know, you never know what you might be interested in or what you may not know, right?
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to try on this try on guideline. The next is, it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to blame, shame, or attack anybody. Make space, take space. and honor confidentiality. So those are the community guidelines. Does anybody have any questions? Or if not, we'll move on to the panelists. Okay, then we can move on. Thanks, everybody. So first, we're going to hear from Pao Amezquita. She's from the Farm Worker Association of Florida. And Paola, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Pao. Let me know if you cannot hear me. I was born in Colombia, and I've been working since 2 years ago with the Farm Worker Association of Florida. The picture you see there is Linda Lee. Miss Linda Lee was the person I met when I as soon as I came here, and she has been part of my inspiration, former farm worker. So yeah, when I got here, and having this understanding that our food system, you know, was built on slavery labor and forced migration, I really saw the systematic inequalities and oppression that Black and Brown rural communities are facing in Florida today, right? So part of this vision from the Farm Work Association and other alliances and movements of seeing a social environment where Black and Brown indigenous people can be at the center of the solutions to respond and gain control over the social, political, economic, workplace, health, environmental justice issues that impact their lives, but also our lives. And really just to support the just transition and deep transformation that our society needs. So I'm gonna drop the link of the Farm Work Association in the chat. You can read more about them. We have national and international alliances. Right now, you can go to the next slide, please. I am working currently with 3 or 4 of them. One of them is the Lake Apopka Farm Worker Memorial Quilt, which is very local from the Apopka community. So just saying, in a very big context, also I will send a link from that. But there is a very deep history in Apopka on injustice with our farm workers and workers in general. And they have been working since long time ago and fighting for justice, but also in preserving this history. So Ms. Linda Lee and other former farm workers have created this project for the mural. I'm dropping also the link for the blog that they have, but also to, you know, you can learn more about the history specifically of the Lake Apopka, of the Apopka in that site, and we can go to the next slide. So this was just in Apopka. The Farm Work Association do all this work through different programs. So those are the programs that you'll see there: pesticide, worker, disaster response, reserve projects, health, and immigrants' right. It is a lot, so again, you can check in the website. I will say that in disaster response, we are also responding on crisis. So right now, in what is going on with COVID, we have been doing a lot of more work and organization on farm workers and Black and Brown people who really are not receiving enough support. We can go to the next slide. And with that, I want to really focus on the program I am working currently. It is the Agroecology project. It started about 6 years ago, and this was an initiative from the farm workers of the Felsmer community. And they start with this intention of growing their own food because they weren't having access to fresh food. They were growing food, but they knew the methods, you know, pesticides and chemicals, and they weren't having access to that food. So they create this community garden, and then through the alliances and support that we receive, we started creating more of those spaces. So agroecology is agriculture that is sustainable, that is helping with the environment, with the people, but more deeply is a tool for farm workers, for small farmers to organize in opposition to the corporate power and give power back to the people who work the land and who are living in the land, because you know the food system is controlled by corporations. So all these community gardens are spaces where we use methodologies that are actually dismantles those barriers and social divisions that we see currently in our lives, like white supremacy, individualism, competition, patriarchy. So these spaces are a base for community to be safe, to come back to their roots, to grow food in the way their ancestors did it before, because we also recognize that this is indigenous knowledge. And also we use popular education methods, collective work. It is a completely different methodology of the regular education system, in just finding new spaces where we can get together to organize and also respond to those who are being the most vulnerable now and since a long time ago. So yeah, through that I am co-coordinating, and I say that because it is really the members taking the decision together. And also we're really focused on growing. You can also pass to the next slide, sorry. There are more pictures. So yeah, we're also doing composting, you know, vermicompost, polyculture, cooking demos, as you'll see there. And one of our, we say is one of our seeds that we want to take care a lot. It's a project based on herbs, ancestral herbs. So we're growing a lot of those ancestral herbs. And right now we're using them a lot to just have traditional medicine for the communities, and it has been also a way of income to keep running the gardens. Because the last thing I want to say is, since 2 years ago we have been running this program with no grants, so it has been literally effort from the community members, fundraisings, and using the resources that we have around. So I will leave it like that, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm gonna drop in the chat the Facebook also of the community garden and the Instagram, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pao. That was really great. I'm really interested in the agroecology program that you're running, so I'm gonna check out the website that you put in the chat. That's awesome. And we're actually going to hold all questions from all of the participants until the question and answer session at the end. So if you don't mind, maybe jot it down or write it in the chat, and we'll get to your question once the question and answer session starts. So next we're going to hear from Dan Smith. He's president of the Seminole Education Association. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Pronounced Smith, first name Dan. And yes, I am the president of the Seminole Education Association, and wondering what that is what most people refer to as the teachers union that represents, supports, and advocates for the 4,700 teachers of Seminole County Public School. My bio is not really very interesting. It's right up there on the screen. It's nothing or another. But I would make mention, since I'm in the presence of a lot of young people, as somebody who has in my scope of my life, run for numerous things and lost and lost and lost. The 2019 election, which I would have been running for president of the association, was the first one that I won. I'm only bringing that up because I can tell you that a couple of years ago, if you ever watch Sunday morning TV, used to be a news show called Crossfire. Now, forgive me, I'm going back before some of you were born. 1985, there was, believe it or not, a music censorship that was on there, and there was a musician named Frank Zappa who said, "What advice can you give for young people who want to make change?" And he said, number one is to register to vote, and number two is to run for something. And running sounded a little far-fetched, but we have a lot of young people in Seminole County for the constitutional offices that are running. Some of them, they may not have much of a chance, but they've chosen to stand up and run. It's very important just for that purpose, right? So, sorry, my next slide, I will tell you that Seminole County Public Schools, in case you were wondering, has 67,000 students approximately, and I told you about 4,700 teachers. If you're trying to figure out class size, don't try to do the math right now, because only about 4,000 of the 4,700 are actually what you think of as what we call classroom teachers. We represent additionally everybody that's considered a teacher-based employee, which could be nurses, school social workers, etc. Okay. One of the reasons that I am speaking tonight and was asked in is because going towards the middle of July, a lot of people are very curious and very afraid about what happens when schools open. This is a situation that is a little scary, but it doesn't have to be scary, okay? The public school system has what we call a community obligation and a public trust. It's one of those things that you don't even really think about because you just send your kids to school or you go there yourself. You don't really think about it until something disrupts it. I take it for granted every time I turn on the water faucet that water is going to come out and it's going to taste okay and I'm not going to get PERSIN. But when it does happen, it becomes problematic. Now, I think you guys are aware that the school districts were faced with an order from the governor's office that they must open, and the order said by August 31st, depending on where you live. In Seminole, it would mean the students will start coming in on August 17th. Now, what they didn't do and recommend for the schools was how to come up with a plan that's going to be safe. So parents think it's safe, so the employees think it's safe, and so the children think it's safe. Children are pretty resilient, I think you know that. So the guidelines were based on what the CDC was asking for social distancing and masks and other PPE. Now, those of you who have ever gone to public school, I think you know that they were built for social interaction. They were not built for social distancing. And that's nobody's fault. You have to go back over 100 years before we had the last pandemic. And, there were about 1.4 million people living in the United States. Now there's close to 7.5 million people. So things are very different. So what do? How do you get 67,000 students into this safely? And unfortunately, the answer is there is no way to do it. It can't be done. So at this point in time, we don't know how many students are going to be returning for a host of reasons. But unfortunately, at this point, I can tell you the schools at this moment are not going to be safe to return to, according to the CDC guidelines. Next slide. So at this moment, if you're in Seminole, I'm just going to speak for Seminole alone, you probably have received some emails from the superintendent's office or Seminole County Public Schools in general that are going to ask you to choose what type of schooling, if it were, that you're going to want to do. And you're going to be sending them back or homeschooling, whatever it may be. We have an obligation to provide children with all services, and that could be anything from healthcare to feeding to those students who are learning disabled, who have certain services, whether it be speech therapy or anything else, then we can certainly do that, but just not easily and safely inside of the school, all right? Next slide. So the 4 choices that you're looking at, by the way, and I'm hoping that you got this information, are traditional face-to-face, which simply means what everybody thinks of the school. You go in, you sit in a classroom, whatever it may be, okay? There is something called virtual, which is Seminole County Virtual School, and just explanation purposes only, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's a little confusing when we go to the next one, which is distance learning. Seminole County Virtual is before, think about 2-3 years ago, or before we had this pandemic, what would be considered online teaching. And that's what virtual, Seminole County Virtual is. Your student would be taking an English, physical education, whatever it may be, if they chose to do this, and they would have modules set up by a remote teacher, which we have 28 of them right now in Seminole County who do this. And the tasks are on a website and everything that you would need to do, okay? Now, the other one, number 3, is Seminole Connect. It's what you would have known as distance learning, going back into April and May when the order was first that we had to leave the schools, and it went nationally as well. Now, it's nobody's fault. The districts had about a week to put something together, and the teachers had to take what the district was doing and put it together to get some type of instruction. But it was really intended just to be a Band-Aid for engagement, not really learning. So if you look at the other districts in Florida and all over the country, nobody wants to use the word distance learning anymore because it has a negative connotation, because it was a very difficult on the parents. Seminole Connect is what Seminole has renamed that. And that is an option that means if your students don't want, if you think your children are not, it's not safe to go back, and it's not, by the way, then you would choose Seminole Connect. And what that does is it gives you an option for learning at home, but you, instead of, unlike Seminole County Virtual, number 2 above, this means you'd be following your school's bell schedule, whatever it would be, 1st through 7 periods, or if you're in the elementary, you would be following along during the time frame for whatever it would be. There's a possibility that your class would have some students in the schools learning while you're learning, but you would be remote doing the Seminole Connect. And then the 4th one is the hybrid. I don't really want to go into too much of that because that one's going to fall on its face. There are situations where some of the elementary children, they may want to choose to go face-to-face, but then they will be given the option of doing what they call a hybrid. They could do Seminole County Virtual as well. For the 6th grade through 12th, they could do face-to-face, and they also could do a couple of classes that would be Seminole Connect. It's not an easy thing to do. I can tell you that I had a conversation with the superintendent, Dr. Walt Griffin, this morning. We spoke for about an hour, and he has a very difficult task on his shoulders. It's easy for me to point at what they're doing and saying it's not going to work because I'm not the one sitting in the seat doing it. But we've had a lot of difficulty in Seminole with getting some of this out. And they did put together a good program for Seminole Connect. And the thing about Seminole Connect, and the reason I'm kind of focusing on that, is the superintendent and I both are in agreement that for the parents who have not gone on, and by the way, as of this date, only 20% of the parents have gone on to state how their student is going to be returning. So the other 80% of you, you might want to get the word out. We're really pushing Seminole Connect because it's fluid. It makes a much easier transition. So we would like to see as many of our students go on to Seminole Connect. And then when the numbers go down and things are a little bit better, we'll have a much easier time getting them back into the brick and mortar, okay? Now, you can go to the next slide. One of the things that we want to look at, what they want to look at with this is how did it affect the families? Now, ideally, the safest way to open the schools is to do it remotely. But as I said earlier, the school system has an obligation to the public and the community. And there are many, many parents that their children just aren't good candidates for any type of distance learning, whether we call it Seminole Connect or whatever it may be. Some of the children who are special needs, they can't work on the computers for too long, and they're not going to get much of an education. Now, unfortunately, and it'll sound like I'm blaming the school district in this case, but I really think they should have anticipated this. Some of our families that are not fluent in English had some difficulty in April and May, and we've got that fixed. They didn't have translators ready to help the parents, and the parents had some struggle and some difficulty. So we have that better in place now for this case. Seminole, once we know what the numbers are by Friday, are also going to be prepared to get devices to the people as well. We just haven't filled that blank in yet at this point. Okay. Just one more bit of information for this as well is it's hard to see, but on the little link that's up there on the screen, we're concerned that our parents aren't getting all of the health information they should be getting. And there's going to be tomorrow night a panel of doctors that are going to be on that link that was there, and I think at 6:30 p.m. And you could jump on any time, but I think you'd have to register first. And it's going to be Facebook Live through one of the school board members' site, Christine Krause, who is, by the way, the one person who voted against the unsafe plan that Seminole put together. And the teacher's very proud of her. But those MDs are going to be available. They're not government employees. They're not party affiliated people, and they're going to give good, honest answers about how they feel about the safety of the return and what other options may be with this. I've gone a minute over time, forgive me. So I'm going to stop at that point right now. And, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks so much for sharing. And wow, it looks like parents have some tough decisions to make for this fall. So definitely looking forward to see what's on that link that you put in the chat there. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Mark Kateli. He's president of Cuplet Fern chapter of the Native Plant Society. And
Hey, nice to see you finally.
nice to see you. Yeah, we've been chatting for quite some time now.
Yeah, I need to connect with you after this. But hey, everyone, I'm Mark. I'm the president of Cuplet Fern chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. Many of you are probably wondering what the heck is a couplet fern, but it's actually a very rare plant that is only found in 2 counties here in the entire 48 United States, lower 48. So those 2 counties, one happens to be in Seminole and the other happens to be in Brevard. And those are the only 2 counties that it's naturally found. So it's a very rare plant. We represent the Florida Native Plant Society here across the state. I also happen to be a master gardener. I'm an avid native plant enthusiast. I go to bed every night reading something about a native plant. So I'm definitely a native plant head. And I also happen to be an event planner. So in case you guys are interested in getting together, bringing the community together to discuss various issues, including native plants and the environment, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Next slide, please. So I wanted to actually just touch base really quickly to show how drastically Florida has changed. Land use has been a top contributor of biodiversity loss. As you can see from this map, most of it is being used by crops and farming, but where the arrow indicates, that's Seminole County and North Orlando, the North Orlando suburbs, and it's all gray, and that actually shows you that it's mixed residential, urban, roads, sand, rock, sand. So ours is mostly commercial, residential, and roads. Next slide, please. So Florida's population has grown dramatically. So 120 years ago, we had less than 1 million people in the entire state. Less than 1 million people in the entire state. And now we stand close to 22 million individuals. And that's a 3,900% increase. It's pretty dramatic. We now are the 3rd most populous state in the entire country. We recently surpassed the state of New York. So we're only behind larger states like California and Texas. Next slide, please. So species loss is due to fragmentation, and this is happening because of land use development, and that equates to a loss in biodiversity. So this infographic shows the bears marked in gray and with red arrows pointing towards them, and those are the interior species. And once you fragment up the land, you lose those larger mammals. So what happens to them? So conservation is an important part of what Florida Native Plant Society is. Next slide, please. So species still have a fighting chance, some of them. So when land use is used properly, we actually see, you know, there being connective parts to it, where wild areas are connected to other wild areas, and there happens to be a ribbon of wild areas. And you can have a variety of plants that are still present there, native plants that help with native animals as well. And as you can see from the graph, you can get bugs, birds, and smaller mammals. However, keep in mind that you don't see larger mammals like bears in this graph, because bears need a large you know, untouched area, conservation lands to really thrive. So this is no substitution for conservation land policy. This infographic really shows where land sharing is in place. So we really want to try to attain the top figure up there. The bottom figure is where the land is not being shared at all, and you're really decreasing and probably eliminating a lot of your native animal species over time. Next slide, please. So is this native Florida to you? So many people see this huge wall of green, you know, when they're traveling down highways and roads, and they think, oh, that's what native Florida is. Thank God I have a well-manicured lawn, and, you know, I like the crepe myrtles, and I like the manicured, you know, landscape setup, because everything else is just a jungle. And quite frankly, that's not the case. So what you're looking at right here is skunk vine, which is an exotic invasive plant that has pretty much swallowed the entire patch of land. It happens to be also a federal noxious plant, so it is unlawful for it to be transplanted, moved around, and propagated. So there are plants that are exotic invasives that are so bad that it is unlawful to move them around. So what you're looking at is not native Florida. Next slide, please. This is also not native Florida. So again, you're seeing what we have, air potato vine. So it has pretty much swallowed up this area as well. Thankfully, we have an air potato beetle, as some of you know, that is slowly munching away at this noxious weed and trying to reinstate the land to what it was. So this is not native Florida. Next slide, please. So invasive exotic plants cost the environment and us lots of tax dollars. So the best way is, just as people want to stay healthy, the environment also wants to do the same. And just like us that wants to take in preventive measures, eating right, diet, exercise, it's always easiest to prevent the introduction of native plants into ecosystems, non-native plants, I'm sorry. So, but after a while, the situation changes up to the point that there are serious costs just to manage an invasive exotic plant. These group of plants cost tens of millions of dollars just to control them. So at some point after a certain amount of time, eradication is not possible. And you're just spending millions upon millions of dollars just to control and manage an invasive plant. And you cannot let that invasive plant just run amok. Think about water hyacinth. Think about recreational activities. If you let water hyacinth just kind of grow at its own pace, it will eventually choke out all our waterways here in Florida. It's an extremely adept, non-native exotic plant that also happens to be on the federal noxious weed list. So next slide, please. So this is native Florida. So here we have our rain lilies blanketing a beautiful managed parcel of land. Next slide, please. This is native Florida. So this is taken in Osceola County, and this shows Osceola's plume. Happens to be part of the lily family. So this is native Florida. Next slide, please. This is native Florida, and this is right before fall. The man is actually holding what we call a blazing star. Matter of fact, the land in front of him is just going to be bursting in different colors once fall hits. So there is a fall in Florida, especially when you look at native plants. Next slide, please. So Florida native plants provide shelter and food to native wildlife. As many of us know, they complement each other's needs, meaning you'll see a native plant community. You won't see the same plant over and over and over again. Typically, that's the case with exotic invasive plants. They just take over, and you just see an entire colony of them, and they've pushed out everything near to their existence. So native plants complement each other's needs. That's what we call a native plant community. They attract wildlife, which happens to be part of the Master Gardener program. It's one of their principles. And then when properly sited, these can survive without fertilization, irrigation, or cold protection. So no amount of fertilizer is needed when you site the plant correctly. Irrigation, you can slowly taper it off to eliminate it. And cold protection. So when we have a cold snap, our native plants are adapted to it. So they help restore regional landscapes. And I really like the quote from Lady Bird Johnson, which was, she was an avid gardener and one of our forerunners in the native plant message. And she said, wherever I go in America, I like it when the land speaks its own language in its own regional accent. Next slide, please. So benefit number one, requires less maintenance. It's a beautiful natural look, easy to maintain, and those cone flowers in there are actually bird seed. So rather than putting out bird food to help attract birds into your yard, if you're a bird lover, why don't you grow your own bird feeder? Next slide, please. It saves water. It has an important conservation message. So natives can withstand drought. They're drought tolerant. They're adapted to Florida's wet and dry seasons. They also help retain water and slows it down from washing into gutters. So remember, native plants increase water infiltration into the ground, and this is an important factor in replenishing Florida's aquifer. Next slide, please. And the cost of water is something that we can all get behind. Everybody has a water bill, right? So no matter if you're a native plant enthusiast or not, just look at the dollar factors associated with this. So our current water supply, it's $1 to $1.50 per 1,000 gallons. But if we start going towards surface water, seawater, then our water bill is much higher. It could be $3 to $8.50 per 1,000 gallons. So the cost of water is tied to native plants. Next slide, please. It saves us money. So native plants reduce the frequency of mowing along highways, and they also provide a great benefit to pollinators. So here is a patch of roadside that has been converted from just a standard lawn into a wildflower meadow. So it's doing double duty as looking pretty, but also an excellent nectar source for pollinators, as well as larval host plants. Next slide, please. It creates a wildlife habitat. So the more plants that you have, native plants you have, the more the wildlife responds to it. So when you increase your native plant selections, wildlife responds equivalently. When you reduce your lawn and implement rain gardens, flower beds, trees, and shrubs of various height, this greatly increases niches for different species to use. Right? Our native plants have co-evolved with our native soil, which in turn have specialized with our native ecosystems. And it provides natural character. So make a statement with it. Try something new. Next slide, please. Yeah, so you can do something as simple as replace your lawn turf with a native plant, and this is frog fruit here, and it's attracting a butterfly. It could be as simple as that. Next slide, please. So discover and get involved. So choose native plants that are local to your area. Go to fnps.org. You can always Google us at Cuplet Fern, and our email address is cupletfern@gmail.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. That was a great presentation. And now we'll take any questions that you may have. So if you had any questions that maybe you jotted down or just kind of stored in the back of your mind throughout the whole presentation, go ahead and just either speak up, announce who the question's for, or go ahead and write it in the chat, and we'll hope to get those answered. And I have one question here to start with, so let's see. So this question's actually for Mark. Mark, how has COVID-19 changed your work in the community?
Well, when it happened, there was no option for us. How was our outreach going to look like? Everything had canceled. All our educational tents, plant sale events, special classes, we couldn't meet in person anymore. So we had to scramble, and we were looking outwards for options, but there were no options out there. So we decided to go ahead and do it ourselves. So I think the shutdown happened March 14th, and by April 1st, we was already doing our live online programs. So we do them across Facebook, Instagram, and now Zoom, stuff like that. So it's mostly online now.
Okay. Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to having to switch to that virtual platform in place of their traditional out there and in the community like activities. Okay, so there is a question in the chat here, and I believe this is for Mark as well. Is there a nursery that you recommend for native plants?
Yeah, if you are in Seminole, unfortunately, the closest native plant nursery is in Lake County. It's called Green Isle Gardens. You can just Google them, Green Isle Gardens, and you'll get all the information you need. It's an all-native nursery. They're very helpful, excellent resource to get you started.
Awesome, great. And I don't know how to tell if there are questions coming in from Facebook. So if those could be redirected to the chat, that would be amazing. Let's see, the next question I have here, this one is for Pao. This is, what do you feel has been your greatest accomplishment so far?
Well, through the process, I feel it has been challenging to have a multicultural, multi-ethnic group in the garden, which is the idea. So I think since I got here 2 years ago, that has been the process to really work on language justice and also different like ways that we can have the groups together around, plants. So yeah, definitely that during the process, and seeing anytime more and more children just growing their food, just being themselves in their space. That is really nice because it's seeing generations understanding or having these spaces that we were completely disconnected from. So yeah, I will say that. And every Sunday we do some harvest, and the herbs of fresh food that they take to their homes and to their families. I think that means a lot to me, and also for myself to be able to eat fresh food.
That's great. Thank you so much. This next question here is for Dan. What can community members do to support teachers and students?
Well, I think probably the most effective way, times notice, is to send emails to the Seminole County Public School Board, and I can get that information on the screen or get it to Karen afterward, and the superintendent, just explaining that due to the current trends, and things are going to be very different between now and August 4th and between now and August 17th, that remind them that they have a duty to the safety of the children and the employees, and to really step back from trying to put 67,000 students into a building where you're going to be elbow to elbow, and just do the safe thing. That's probably the most effective way. And any help is very appreciated by any community members. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dan. And can you follow up on that from this question from Gomer, which is, what is a realistic option for parents to fight back right now? What does fighting back look like?
Okay, for fighting back, I'm not really certain. Like fighting back to trying to get all, if it's to fight back to keep all of the children safe, then I think realistic is to just, it's kind of hard. This is, forgive me, I'm going back to June 10th now, and the recommendation at that moment that came from me as president and representing the teachers was to target our students who really just are not online learners as an option, or in situations where we have parents who, it's not a matter of they just want their kid to go back to get off their back. I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about some of our parents, they're single, they're single parenting, they're working 2 jobs, and if they don't send their child back, they could lose their job and they could lose their health care benefits. So certainly going back to when I said the school system has sympathy and we have an obligation to them, we wanted to find those parents alone and get those kids back into the school and everybody else go remotely. So if now in this short time frame, it's going to be very difficult for the district to identify who these people are. But most of them are in elementary, really, or something like that. But I think that we should try to just find out how many of our kids absolutely have to go back, and the rest of them, we will get them access to all materials and whatever is needed and let them start remotely. And it's funny, when I was looking, I forget what slide it was exactly, but on one of Mark's slides, he was showing a graph where with the, I guess the non-native plants, where you have a chance of getting rid of them, but then what winds up happening, you hit the point of no return. I don't want to say we're not quite at the point of no return now, but if we open recklessly at 67,000 kids or so, then we are going to be at the point of no return. If it's done the right way, which is mostly remote, then we could really deal with it and hopefully see the numbers go down. And then by January, start getting the kids back in to how we would put it in. I think I lost track of that. I'm sorry about that, but I think there was an answer in there somewhere.
I think you might have touched base, and Gomer, if you did not, if you didn't clarify exactly what you meant by fighting back, if you can write in the chat, that would be awesome. But thank you so much. And in the meantime, we'll go to this question for Pao. Can you speak more on the Farm Workers Memorial Quilt?
Yes, for sure. So in the 90s, there were a lot of farms around Lake Apopka, and all those farms had to close because of contamination in the lake. So all the farm workers that were working in those farms, of course, never received any support. And Linda Lee, and a group of former farm workers, just started. It was after a lot of people start to die, and they were seeing these common sicknesses: lupus, cancer, respiratory problems. So there are a lot of research that show how pesticides definitely affect in their health, but also that this is generational, that your children can be affected with lupus or cancer, or with lupus in particular. It has been the primary case. So they start to do a quilt and every square is one of the former farm workers that have died because of these issues, or that have died until during these times. And around that, the intention is to have exhibitions, art exhibitions, and also the toxic tourist part of that the Park Association does, to just don't forget what happened. And until today, we are still trying to find reparations for that, because when you go and see those communities, those are the ones who are not receiving support right now, and like they're living in really unequal situations. So yeah, and then the mural that they are doing, I feel is a continuation of this, to just keep the memory and also to keep fighting for justice.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And let's see, I think we had one more question in here. Did we have another question? Just bear with me here a moment. I'm scrolling through the chat. Yeah. Okay. So this question from Christina, it's for any of our panelists, Pao, Mark, or Dan. What advice would you have for someone starting their own multi-crop garden? And why is it so important for us to bring local botany and hands-on agricultural work into our public school systems? So I'll just open that to any of the panelists that want to touch on it.
I think Pao should go first because it's tied to crops. She may have a better hold on this than I do, but I do have something to supplement what she has to say.
Yeah, I can say pretty fast from the experience in a podcast, especially because one of the issues was first Florida. Soil is, we don't have soil, we have sand to grow foods. We need to create soil, and that was the first thing I saw when I got here, and also to be aware of the contamination around your area. And the exposition, of course, for us is really important that that we're cleaning and restoring the space first. So from the experience I had, we were just adding organic matter to the space, mulch, hay, leaves, compost, and also starting with herbs and native plants around the area to create like covers around, like barriers around the space where we wanted to plant, to be sure that in the center we will start this process of cleaning the space. We were using also doing vermicompost since the beginning, using worms, and from worms we get this liquid fertilizer that we use, and we use for during all the time in the garden. So it's a natural way to do it. Just pretty simple for those who want to start, even if it's in a little garden. I really recommend mulch. And just because when I got here, I was so surprised how you can access to mulch so easy and for free. So there is this site, cheapdrop.com. I will put it in the chat. You can literally order mulch for free. And this is gonna be, and with the heat in Florida in a couple of months, it's just gonna be soil. And I don't like grass at all, so I really recommend to get rid of the grass and try to look for cover crops that are native and that can, feed the environment, the ecosystem too. And I'm pretty sure you all have more things to add. So.
Yeah. So, my suggestion to you is, if you're doing a backyard vegetable garden and you want to supplement those with native plants, my suggestion is to choose native plants of various heights. So you may want something that's low growing, a shorter shrub, and then maybe a tree, or maybe a plant that will grow into a tree. So it has some sort of ascension. That helps with biodiversity. So you'll have more niches for insects and animals to thrive. When it's just a flat surface or a uniform surface, that actually decreases the biodiversity that is present in your yard. My second suggestion is, if you're going Pao's route and you want to remediate your soil, it's not what Native Plant Society recommends, because we believe our native plants work with our native soils, even when they're sandy. However, you know, our vegetables do not, and people need vegetables to eat and sustain themselves. So we understand that as well. So choose native plants that are forgiving, that can tolerate a wide variety, a range of different soil conditions, from sandy to more organic. Consider what Pao said, that if your mulch starts to decompose and turn into soil, then you want something that can adapt to that over time. So that would be my second suggestion. My third suggestion, as far as the botany element in your question, is if you're going with native plants, a simple rule of thumb is to never utilize more than 20% of the same genus of plants in your yard. So always try to diversify the portfolio of your native plants in your yard. We here at Cuplet Fern always recommend showcasing and spotlighting native plants unique to Central Florida. There are well over 1,000 native plants just in Seminole County species. And Florida is so diverse that if you try to grow Miami native plants, they won't grow here in Central and North Florida. It's a very unique situation. We are the 6th most biodiverse state in the entire country. So we only are second to more exotic locations like California and Hawaii. So there is something very special to Florida when it comes to our native plants.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that information. It's wonderful.
I guess
And
just the last thing to know, just let it pass. Never do not plant monocrops, you know, like just one thing of the same. Yeah, plants like to be together and like family, like different species together. And herbs are really good to remediate the soil. Sunflowers, get a lot of sunflowers for your gardens.
that's great. I love sunflowers, so I'll definitely take that advice. So this next question is for Dan. I think we'll take 2 more questions before we move on. This question here for Dan. If schools open face-to-face prematurely, do you think it would put low-income families and students at risk, or students of at-risk minority groups, pardon me on that, at a greater risk of infection, health concerns, and in turn, greater disadvantage and setbacks for them, both in the educational aspect and in other ways, that when they would have inevitably had to quarantine because of exposure, compared to students who could afford to do virtual schooling? It was a mouthful.
Well, unfortunately, yes. I mean, we could frame almost any question in front of the groups you're talking about, and unfortunately, they seem to take any of these changes or any of these, when they have to make decisions, are most affected, in my opinion. When we have groups that are, for whatever reason, they say the school system does have a duty for a host of reasons for what it is. But if you're looking at groups of people that may not have the same access to healthcare as many of the others, and Seminole historically was what they would call a suburban district compared to Orange, but that's changed considerably just in the last 10 years. And Seminole hasn't changed fast enough. So if this goes back too quickly, I think that our families that don't have access to healthcare or don't have access to many things, I think they're going to be hit the hardest. They're going to be hit the hardest if it goes too early with the infection rate.
I agree with that. Thank you. Thanks for answering that. I appreciate that.
Certainly.
So this question's actually from Dan. Just moved and his front yard has little grass. And the question, I believe, is for Mark. Instead of trying to grow grass, what kind of plants would be good for a front yard?
So if you're trying to maintain the lawn look and you're just trying to replace your turf, there's a set of plants that we can recommend that are turf replacers, but it still kind of looks like a lawn, versus flower beds. If you want to keep it simple and you have a very small area, And I always recommend just a smattering of wildflowers, maybe a couple shrubs, and a tree. And it can be something as easy as a sable palm or a cabbage palm. They are self-cleaning, they are hurricane resistant, and they tolerate a wide variety of soils. So if you're looking for something very low maintenance, definitely go with a cabbage palm. If you're going with lawn replacement plants that kind of look like the lawn, my favorite is frog fruit. And it is it's an excellent pollinator plant, good for bees, good for butterflies, little skippers. It also serves as a larval host for some of our moths. And there are others also out there. You can try wild strawberry as well. And then there's also sunshine mimosa. So in case you like a pop of color, definitely go with sunshine mimosa.
Awesome. That's great. And so the last question I'm going to open up to all of the panelists, if you can give us like just a minute or two answer. What are things that we can do to stay involved in Seminole County around the work that you do? And what would you like to have people here who are participating keep in mind when they leave this chat? Like, what is the one takeaway? So we can start with Pao, if that's okay.
Yes. Well, I will definitely say that I appreciate these spaces where you can really get a specific information. There is a lot of information and misinformation around. So just be really sure to get information, like real information, or yeah, be sure about that information. Keep educating yourself. I feel we're in a time where we're seeing that the system that they put for us is not working in many different ways: food, education, health, etc. So I just feel we are transforming all that in a collective way, but at the same time we're transforming ourselves, and I like to say that word, decolonizing ourselves. So I invite everybody to do that, to, you know, in the way you want to say it, because yeah, decolonizing, healing, or just transforming yourself, but also community around you, your family. Don't forget about your roots, where you come from, and check on your privilege all the time. There are people right now with no access of water, you know, basic things. So remember to check on your privilege. I do believe in those words: equality, justice. So think about those words anytime while you're doing your work. And I will leave it like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. And I guess I'll go down my screen. Dan, would you like to go next? Just a takeaway from what you did today for everybody, and how we can stay involved in the work that you're doing.
Well, certainly use your voice, use your speech in when things are safer under conditions. Be willing and ready to show up to things. Like I said, show up to a school board meeting, show up to a county commissioner's office. You know, the presidency and the governor, they get all the good press as far as things go, but the real decisions are made at the local level. The real governing is going to come from your Seminole County commissioners, your Seminole County School Board. So when you get an opportunity and it's safe to do again, show up to those meetings and let your voice be heard. It's very, very important. I've always believed that decisions are made by those who show up, you know, and you want to show up and you want to get there. There has been a lot of rallying and done safely, regardless of what the president's saying, that I've seen. What's going on? You know, we share the space, whatever you want to call it, the planet or whatever it is, and just be aware that, you know, you're not the only ones there. And this group seems to be much more well-versed in that than I do. And think about your actions and anything you may say and how it's going to affect other people, and be willing to accept what people say, open up, and in regardless of how set you are in what you've always said or anything, just be willing and open to continue learning. I think it's very important. It's going to help all of us out one way or the other to do that. And thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation and for adding that. And Mark, if you don't mind.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. The panel also has been awesome. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I learned a lot just by hearing you guys present individually. The takeaway is that we're here in Seminole County. If you ever need us, just Google Cuplet Fern. We can answer any of your native plant questions. And it's really important. We are in a time and age where native plants are universal. You know, early on in the advent of something as unique as Native Plant Society, it was a message that was only understood by people that were educated, graduates, people that are in the environmental study field, that understood the message that is closely interlinked with biodiversity and native plants, no matter where you are in the world. But my philosophy has always been that native plants are for you and me. This land is my land, this land is your land, this land was meant for you and me. So native plants have a niche and a home anywhere that they're native to. So just reach out to us and we can help you the best we can.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you to all of the panelists that participated today. So I will pass the torch back over to Karen.
Hey everyone, these are the organizations that were a part of our panel today. And so I'm gonna drop a link here. If anyone here on the Zoom call is looking to get involved with Flick Votes, that's how we you know, post all of our events is through the tree link. I'm not sure how Organized Florida likes to keep in touch with folks. Actually, wait, there is a group on Facebook called Seminole County Mutual Aid, led by Haley. And so if you are looking to find, you know, a community in Seminole County, I know various of the groups, I know Native Plant Society has a Facebook page and group, Cuplet Fern chapter, right? So feel free to find them on Facebook and on the Facebook groups. FWAF has the Support the Lake Apopka Farm Worker Historical Mural link, and it's in the chat. We'll also make sure to copy it into the Facebook live stream, along with emailing it afterwards, especially for those who had to head out a little earlier. And you can also donate to the community garden. As Paola mentioned, they completely run on, you know, local donations and local, you know, power, right? And so they haven't received any grants. And so they're doing this all with what they have around. And so definitely make sure, if you have a couple bucks, you can definitely, you know, Cash App, $, Apopka Garden, and it would be greatly appreciated, and it's going to definitely be put to good use. For the Seminole Education Association, we dropped the main link that they would really love for you to fill out, which is a survey done by the Seminole County Public Schools board members, and so you can definitely give your input to what kind of how you want students to come back to school. Just you know, consider that, you know, face-to-face may bring a risk, and so definitely as you're deciding, you know, how to give your input, stay considerate to the concerns of you know, the community. I know personally I learned a lot. I growing up, I actually English was my second language, and so I cannot imagine you know, being in this situation if I were to have been an ESOL student, right? And to be, you know, being educated from home. And so it's very important, you know, that our school system definitely focus resources towards the students who need ESOL or who need extra attention, like students with disabilities. And I want to thank everyone, right? right now, I want to give Haley from Organized Florida a shout out for, just working with me. I know we worked on this panel for a long time, and we really made sure that the folks that joined our panel had very important things to share, and that they could really be of use for our community, because everything here, right, has been very intentional. And like Paola has been mentioning, right, like everything is like intersectional. And so we need to remember, like, where we come from and where we're going, especially during these times, right? And then I also want to thank our panelists, Paola, Dan, Mark, for taking the time on a Tuesday evening and really prepping with us to be able to host this panel. And of course to Rhonda, for also from Organized Florida, for jumping on and running our icebreaker. And lastly, Gomer and Daniel, they are also organizers with Flick Votes. Daniel has been helping run our Facebook Live, and Gomer has been helping, with our presentation. Really appreciate y'all. This isn't even their county, but they just really wanted to help out, and I really appreciate it. And so lastly, we have announcements. If anybody on this call or on Facebook would like to share any announcements, also any of our panelists or any of the folks here, if you have any last minute thoughts or any last minute announcements for upcoming events, we would more than gladly love for you to share them. This video is going to be up on our Facebook Live for people to watch.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to share an announcement about an event that I'm helping plan for next week. It's going to be Hurricane Week, hosted by the Disaster Resilience Initiative. So that's a collaboration between Organized Florida, Central Florida Jobs with Justice, and many, many other organizations, community leaders, communities, etc. And we're going to be having webinars about how to prepare for hurricanes, how to understand how COVID-19 is going to impact this hurricane season. And then we're also going to hear from climate specialists. We're going to hear from the emergency managers from the main three Central Florida counties. And there's going to be trivia, there's going to be prizes and giveaways. So if you can, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. If you can attend, that'd be great. You don't have to attend every session. You can attend a couple sessions, and yeah, I'll leave it at that, and I'll drop the link in the chat.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, in case you're just starting out on native plants, we're having a native plant starter pack idea webisode, and it's on August 8th, and that is coming right before a plant sale on August 15th at the Sanford Garden Club. So in case you want to do your research, you want to see what native plants can work, and they're easy, they're forgiving, they're not high maintenance plants per se. You can watch the free webisode and then check us out at the plants. So I'll just drop the Facebook event in the chat box.
I also want to make a point to share that Flick Votes is going to be hosting a phone bank this Thursday to elect some progressives in the state. As we know, there are a lot of different issues that are being discussed right now by elected officials. And so if you'd like to help out, we have shifts. It starts at 4:30. Feel free to fill out the link that I shared, or to just message me. We'd love for you to join.
I will say we're having community work days every Saturday and Sunday. So if you're interested somehow in getting involved into the garden, in the garden program, you can always send an email to communitygarden@popcar@gmail.com. I put it in the chat. Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much. We finished a couple minutes early. I want to thank everyone again for jumping on, and I'm really glad we were able to share all these announcements. I'm not sure if Dan, are there any future events that you'd like to share?
All right, just the one tomorrow that I think you did post on there. It is a panel of MDs, of doctors that are going to state frankly what they feel about, how safe it is to go back to school. I believe you already put that on there, but that's the only one immediately that we have coming up.
Thank you so much. And if you send me the link, I can make sure to send it in the follow-up email.
It is a panel of
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I want to thank everyone who joined on the Zoom call. I want to thank everyone who joined on the Facebook Live. And if anybody missed any part of this call or missed any of the presentations, you're welcome to go through the Facebook Flick Votes and look at the presentations. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you for organizing this, Karen.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.